the repricing in El Salvador. Do we believe that this is now going to be over the next 1-2 years? Is this going to create a case study for other countries to go, hold on a second?
Well,
what's happened there?
Argentina.
Yeah.
Right? Argentina. He will probably dollarize first and go to Bitcoin. Right? And he'll probably use the same playbook and over time bring economic prosperity, and then more will move to Bitcoin over time.
And that could be a regional thing in South America.
And I think that's going to happen in lots of places in South America. And then it's going to happen in lots of places in Africa. And every time it happens, it's going to strengthen the system that is better for all of us. And so I always ask myself, what would it, because if you just said the ledger that we live in today, by that, if inflation is a theft, and it's the same thing as wage inflation, and it's not natural in a market, then the ledger we live in is based on a theft. Our economic trade all over the world is based on a theft. What would the people that win the most out of that theft say about an economic ledger that isn't based on theft? It's a truthful ledger. And so you could see why the IMF is very critical of Bitcoin. You could see why all of the people that gain the most power, that controls the media today, control all of this, are most critical on Bitcoin. You could see it from the giant corporations that are going slow on Bitcoin. You can understand that because all of their wealth is created by, much of their wealth is created by that theft. And Bitcoin restores that, and it takes that back, and it gives it to everybody.
So what do you think happens in a country like El Salvador? As years go by, as their Bitcoin balance sheet grows to hundreds, maybe even billions. Do you think they use that to pay off their old debt, or do you think they just gradually don't need new debt?
So eventually they won't need new debt, but that'll take a long time.
Right.
But their economy will likely grow so fast because more and more people will move to a free market, and that free market will be more productive than manipulated markets. And then more people will move to free market, more innovation. It'll accelerate, and the debt in the other system is going to be inflated away. And in Bitcoin's price will climb a lot by that other debt going inflated away, and they'll be able to pay it off for nothing, right? Over time. That's what Michael Saylor is doing in his own balance sheet, because he understands what the system looks like. And if you look at right now what Michael Saylor will be able to do to retire the debt that he already has to be able to acquire the Bitcoin, looks like a pretty good trade.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what will happen. And again, the debt is being repriced all over the world by Bitcoin.
It's the same trade that a young woman makes in Malawi when they exchange their kwacha or time or labor for Bitcoin, right? That's the cool part, is it's happening everywhere. Something I would just say, look, there's a lot of things we don't know about El Salvador's Bitcoin holdings. We don't even really know where is the Bitcoin, who holds the keys. We don't even know if they're buying Bitcoin. Like last year, Bukele said he's buying a Bitcoin a day. Guess what? Bitcoin is a technology where he could actually show that to us. We have no idea. He's never verified any of this. And a lot of people in El Salvador are upset about this because, that public money, it's not his personal money, it's the taxpayer money, and they don't know where it's going. And he says it's going this way, we don't even know. But let's just assume that he has control over it and the state has control over it, and it's not gonna flee or be rugged or whatever. Then what ends up happening is, even though there's been a lot of problems in El Salvador with the rollout of Chivo, which was kind of a disaster, and some other things, and people today, or at least this summer, were kind of, I tried the Bitcoin, it didn't really work. There's a lot of that going on. The thing is, when the Bitcoin price goes up, everybody's like, oh, wait a second, we have this infrastructure. And even though someone like me is quite critical of Bukele and the government, what I can't deny is that this is going to be tremendously helpful for the people. That infrastructure, that idea has been laid, people have been educated about this thing. They may lose interest in it during a downturn or a bear market, but as the cycle keeps chipping away, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, they're going to be in a great position. And I've always thought that. They're going to be in a pole position, honestly.
It's these densities of Bitcoin. So when I first went to El Zonte, it was a few people, Michael Peterson, a few kids that he employed to clean up and teach surfing, and he would pay them in Bitcoin, and then they would go to the local shop and buy their pupusas or get their hair cut. And it was just like this little tiny circular economy. But you have that seeded density of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened is like the last time I went to El Zonte, I'm sure you've been, but it's like everywhere now accepts Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And Bitcoiners are traveling there, and that's growing that density. But what's going to happen is I know the guy selling the coffee, he was accepting Bitcoin and he was seeing it dropping. But now as it comes back, he now sees the benefit. So that density of Bitcoin around, suddenly El Zonte as a region becomes richer.
When were you there?
First time was, I think, 2019 after the Bitcoin.
So what I would say is to bring it back to Malawi for a second. And then you and I went in 2021, and by then it was like the wheels were moving. But 2019, when you went to Bitcoin Beach, or 2020 in that range, that's kind of what we're probably looking at in a country like Malawi right now. You had a small meetup, you had a handful of people using it. Most people in the country were totally clueless. That's what's happening in Malawi right now. So this month, there's going to be the first Bitcoin meetup in the capital.
Yeah.
And you're going to start to grow, and it's not going to be stopped. There might be challenges, roadblocks. There's been so many scams here, so many cryptocurrency scams in Southern Africa, in this region, that people are sick and tired of Bitcoin because they think they can inflate it in their mind with MLMs and Ponzi's and all of these different coins. So it's going to take education and grassroots education. That's why the meetups and the physical spaces are so important. But you can't stop this thing.
But that's what's happening in Bedford. That's what's happening in Portugal, or sorry,
Philippines,
in Madeira. It's happening all over, and then these regions. Actually, HRF's doing a really good job of that. Is connecting these regions, and now you're saying, wait, this is working over there, and how's that working? And the technology is other layers are coming in to connect it at a different level. So it's wild.
It's like a virus. Let's say what it is. It's like a virus. It's spreading, and it's building. But it's those densities of Bitcoin that I think are super important. Like I say, the net wealth, or the Bitcoin net wealth of El Zonte over the next year might 4, 5, 6x. And we know what we're going to see is new hotels. I know of apartment blocks being built there. And people are going to look at it and go, why can't we have that?
But do you think it will work as effectively in places like Malawi? I think it's great that they're having a meetup, but in El Salvador, it was a little bit different because Michael Peterson had a big donation at the start, so he could actually start spreading Bitcoin. Whereas in Malawi, they don't have that.
But here's something that El Salvador didn't have, Machankura. So this is very different. So in Africa, you have a lot of incredible innovations that people in the West are completely ignorant about. There's a young man named KG, brilliant. He's from South Africa. He came up with a way to use Bitcoin without the internet. And the first phase of this is an app called Machankura. There's a smartphone version, but then there's a version you use on a feature phone, meaning a phone with no sort of data capability. And you just use SMS. And you use it to access essentially a custodial Lightning wallet, like Wallet of Satoshi. But you can use it with no internet. So, among the young people in Malawi, according to some interviews we did yesterday, most people have one of the two things. They either have a smartphone with internet, at the university level, let's say, or they have a feature phone. I mean, very few people in, the 18 to 40 age bracket who are like, in university or working, etc. in the country have neither. Very few have neither. And that means that everybody in Malawi who's really like potentially a Bitcoin user can access it straight away. And there's already an agreement that Machankura has with the telecom in Malawi. So, we're ready to onboard people. It's just a matter of the education and the meetups. But I mean, this thing is going to be hard to stop.
But or add to the village we went to, right? For the first time, the village has electricity because of Bitcoin mining and gridless.
What was it you said to me? Imagine trying to stop this.
Imagine trying to stop this because we're up in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere.
And we walk into this Bitcoin mine that's running on the river, so they can get essentially free energy, and the excess they're powering the village. And so now, as those villagers start to understand the Bitcoin integration, this is spreading out. Not only you're giving economic hope because now they can turn their lights on and all the time, medical, everything else. It's so staggering. Now, as those villagers understand the backbone to this thing is this thing that you just plug into this network that chases abundant energy, gives us more energy, and we make money from it. Those villagers are going to start to wait, I want to get into on this game too. And so you're starting to, and as people understand this, they explode, the free market explodes. And what ends up happening is that's it. You can't stop this because the free market won't let this stop because they're going to chase abundant energy everywhere
What was
for the money.